question. And there's not a simple answer to that for me. It's really a lifetime of learning from the military service, from endurance training, from businesses that I have sculpted from a napkin to being funded by private equity for $3 million and that collapsing. Other businesses that looked like they were going to be dreams come true that didn't work out. But at the same time, there's been other things that have been wildly successful. But it's been the combination of all of that that has really led me to wanting to spend time talking to individuals that are struggling and with that identity and how that identity impacts systems and processes and businesses and relationships, communities, neighbors. It affects all of those things. And that's really what inspires me to talk to other people is about the journey that I went through and my ability to share hopefully some of those lessons that may inspire others to look inside and change who they are, maybe where they're going.
Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive, everyone. We are so glad to have you with us today.
Absolutely. This is going to be a really, really interesting conversation.
It really is. So, our core mission for this deep dive is unpacking exactly what happens when highly successful people are just completely internally disconnected.
Right. We are exploring that dangerous illusion of high performance.
Exactly. And we'll be examining why business systems so often just scale our deepest dysfunctions. But before we jump into all that, I need to explicitly state that this podcast is called the Systems Thinker Show. Please subscribe or follow and share with 10 friends or business associates.
Yes, please do. And keep in mind, these deep dives will always focus on ways to improve team cultures.
For sure. And wow, we also need to announce that this is Season 7, Episode 60. We want to express our deepest gratitude to the listeners in 70 countries.
It is genuinely incredible to see that kind of global reach.
It really is. Additionally, we kindly request that you consider subscribing or following. Currently, less than 23% of our listeners are subscribed. That helps us with the streaming algorithm so we can continue bringing you these best-in-class business cultural insights.
It makes a massive difference for the show, so we appreciate it.
We do. And I also want to mention that this podcast complements the business playbook's Shift Happens, How to Lead with Purpose and Discipline Every Day. Culture by Design, Power by Discipline, Volume 1, Culture by Design, Power by Discipline, Volume 2, and now you can pre-order Culture by Design, Power by Discipline, Volume 3. All 4 books available at Amazon and other online bookstores in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Europe, Japan, and Australia.
Those books are just, they are phenomenal resources to pair with what we talk about here.
Definitely. Okay, so for today's special guest source material, we are looking at an interview with Scott Lackey, founder at Scott Lackey.
Yeah, and you'll want to check out his book to be released May 15th, 2026. Please follow Scott at https://scottlackey.com resources.
His work is so eye-opening. I want to share his exact mission statement because it just perfectly sets up our whole deep dive. He says, if that individual is misaligned, disconnected, or operating from the wrong identity, then all we're doing is scaling the very outcomes we never intended to create. That is what I want to talk about. My mission is to help.
That hits hard, right? Scaling outcomes we never intended to create.
It does. We are going to get into exactly how that happens in just a second. But first, we have some fantastic sponsors that make this show possible. This episode is sponsored by Crunch Time Gourmet Popcorn and Apples, a sweet little gem out of Bridgeport, WV. They're producing gourmet treats daily, and the heart of it all is their homemade caramel, crafted in small batches from a closely guarded, one-of-a-kind recipe.
Oh, that sounds so good right now.
Right. If you want a flavor that hits, start with their caramel apples, like apple pie. Fresh Granny Smith apples dipped in homemade caramel, covered in premium white chocolate, and finished with cinnamon sugar. Need something for your next event or even a fundraiser? They also support fundraising and food truck bookings through the contact page. Visit crunchtimewv.com and treat yourself the right way.
Such a great option for, treating your team and building that culture.
100%. Also, today's resource spotlight is LinkedIn, the platform built to help professionals connect, learn, and create opportunity. Whether you're hiring, job searching, building credibility, or growing a business, LinkedIn is where the decision makers are. Follow him on LinkedIn at www.linkedin.com and Zlinier Johnson, and send him a note with the word systems so I know you came from the show.
It's basically the essential tool for building your professional identity these days.
It really is. And finally, today's show is powered by Fundrise, the online investment platform that opens the door to alternative assets like venture capital. Their innovation fund, ticker VCX, is designed to deliver long-term growth by investing in a diversified portfolio of high-growth private technology companies across multiple stages of development. You can get exposure to firms focused on artificial intelligence, data infrastructure, and more before they go public, without the high barriers typically associated with traditional VC investing. Visit fundrise.com/VCX to learn how to start with as little as a small commitment and begin building for the long term.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into Scott Lackey's background, because it is crucial to understanding why he focuses so much on identity.
Yeah, let's do it. So Scott is not just, sitting in a room theorizing. He has lived this. He has a background in military service, extreme endurance training, and he literally built businesses from a napkin pitch all the way to securing $3 million in private equity funding.
Which is the dream, right? I mean, structurally, he reached the absolute peak.
He totally did. But then he watched that entire empire completely collapse. And that brings us to his first major insight, which is that high performance is actually a highly effective hiding place.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A hiding place. That is such a powerful way to frame it.
It is, right. Because think about it like this. I want to give you, the listener, an analogy to bring this to life. Imagine strapping a massive 1,000 horsepower racing engine onto a car that has a severely cracked chassis.
Okay, I can picture that.
Right. So you're flying down the highway at top speed. From the outside, it looks incredibly fast, and everyone is super impressed by the performance. But internally, the vibration from that engine is just tearing the vehicle apart.
Yeah, because the foundation is fundamentally broken. It's a mechanical failure waiting to happen.
Exactly. So why does this happen with leaders? Like, why do they let the chassis crack in the first place?
Well, it's because the world constantly rewards output. When you produce results, you get praise, you feel safe, and you get this illusion of control.
Right. Society literally pays you to ignore the cracks.
Precisely.
Hey, Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It is great to be here, and I'm excited about our discussion.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about your background. You got military service, you're a business leader, endurance performance, but now your work is focused around identity. What happened to cause that shift?
Yeah, great question. And there's not a simple answer to that for me. It's really a lifetime of learning from the military service, from endurance training, from businesses that I have sculpted from a napkin to being funded by private equity for $3 million and that collapsing. Other businesses that looked like they were going to be dreams come true that didn't work out. But at the same time, there's been other things that have been wildly successful. But it's been the combination of all of that that has really led me to wanting to spend time talking to individuals that are struggling and with that identity and how that identity impacts systems and processes and businesses and relationships, communities, neighbors. It affects all of those things. And that's really what inspires me to talk to other people about the journey that I went through and my ability to share, hopefully, some of those lessons that may inspire others to look inside and change who they are, maybe where they're going.
Gotcha. So you talk about waking up to who you became. What was that moment for you?
Again, not a single moment, but I would say in the last, I'm going to say this first, I guess in the last 10 years, a lot of things have come full circle for me. And when I say full circle, they've come full circle back to myself. And again, it wasn't like I had this one, lightning strike epiphany. It wasn't like that at all. It was more maybe a maturity. Of course, as we get older, we become wiser.
Right.
And one of the things that I think about, it's a short sentence, but I think about all the time is a saying that I read a long time ago that I once went out into the world to change the world, and then I became wise and decided I would change me.
Hmm.
And that philosophically sums up something I believe strongly. And I think many of us go out to change the world. And that's a noble cause for sure.
Hmm.
And my challenge to, the audience and people that I speak with is that, if we fix ourselves first, the gift we get by default is you're going to change the world. But conversely, the things that are challenges within us, you're going to carry that to the world as fast as anything. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. So let's talk about, many high performers, they look successful externally, but they feel disconnected internally. Why does that happen?
Yeah, the high performers. Uh, I've been a high performer at a lot of things in my life, and I would say that high performance becomes a highly effective hiding place for us or anybody. A
Really?
lot of driven people, they learn early, like I did, from the results because you get safety from the results, you get praise, significance comes from the results, and to some degree control, or at least the illusion of control.
Hmm.
And we build that identity around what we call our capabilities, our usefulness, our productivity, our resilience. So the problem is that those things, I think in many cases, as they did for me, they become a substitute for you being whole as a human. Okay. So the world, we all know, right? The world rewards us for output in some cases, not always, but it rarely stops, and people rarely stop and ask, is the person that's producing the output, how are they internally aligned? And so we just, as people, we just keep building more and more responsibility, more achievement, more systems, more goals. But if the things that we've built those on are disconnected from our identity or our flaws, as I say we carried forward a few minutes ago, then there doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much success we've had. It's not going to heal that fracture. It just deepens it. It masks it more, if I could describe it that way. So
Right.
externally, it looks like strength, but internally, it feels like, I think listeners would say, I've done all these things. I have all this success. Why am I exhausted? Why do I feel numb? Why am I restless? Why do I feel like I'm not where I was supposed to be? It's that quiet sense that something's off.
Hmm. Hmm. Let's transition to talk a little bit about identity versus strategy. Um, you challenge the idea that system, strategy, and tools solve problems. Why do you believe that identity is the real issue?
Well, I don't want to affirm that I think or that I'm against systems and certainly not against discipline, right? I actually conversely believe in them deeply. Systems are important, processes are important, discipline is critical. But what I do allege and what I do believe is that systems can really only be scaled if they're already present in the leader, if I could say it that way. In other words, if the leader has internal alignment, then the systems that he or she is creating will bring about greater clarity. If the leader's disconnected, then I think systems simply just help scale that disconnect. Um, Maybe another way of saying it is that systems don't create character. I think they reveal character. And
Mhm.
so over time, you could have, an honest person using them, and you can have a great strategy to improve execution. But in the end, if someone's a troubled leader, it's ultimately going to come out, and it's going to come out in different ways and different processes. The process isn't going to protect the company from somebody who's manipulated or destroyed the strategy because of their internal failings. So I don't reject the strategy, right? I just think strategies, I guess I would say is I think strategies downstream and identities upstream. Maybe that's a succinct way of saying it.
Gotcha. So what happens when someone tries to fix an outcome without addressing, who they are?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think generally you see temporary improvement, but long term, I think the problem repeats itself. I guess I'm trying to think of a more succinct way of saying that if people don't address who they are,
Hmm.
right? If we don't focus some type of training on being better humans, better people, then we're going to stay trapped in almost symptom management. Okay. We're going to try a new plan. We're going to try a new routine, a new operating system, a new tactic, new hires, new goals. It's, in corporate America, it's just incestuous that way. Always something new. And what happens is that those patterns, in my opinion, they just reappear, but in a different form.
Right.
So if, again, whoever the leaders are, and this can be employee based as well, but typically leaders have more influence, is that the outcomes that they think they're producing ultimately may improve some of the numbers, but I just think over the long term, you're going to see that deteriorating human condition find its way into the company. And it's ultimately going to show up, I believe, long term in metrics. It's going to damage trust. It's going to damage the soft things that ultimately make the culture of a company, right? Trust, relationships, and leadership skills.
Right. So how do leaders unknowingly scale dysfunction, within the organization?
Yeah, unknowingly. That's the key word, right? I guess, to some degree, more or less, we all have our own dysfunctions. And I joke around the office sometimes about, you hear this, people say that we're all one big family. And that, I guess you could argue that, right? But we're a big dysfunctional family,
Mm,
using that word. And it's easy to confuse with things that work with things that are healthy. So dysfunctional leadership, again, can produce results. We see it all the time.
right.
But over time, dysfunction spreads in an organization. And that dysfunction from leadership, it ultimately determines the culture, right? And people perform for approval instead of working from conviction. And I love the Chick-fil-A example. When I live near Atlanta, and
Hmm.
I'm not saying they're a perfect business, but what a wonderful business model. And the enthusiasm that those employees communicate to people that go through the drive-through or people that come to the restaurant.
Right.
And that culture has been wildly successful because of management's, I think, alignment, not with just their mission, but the people that they have. So, you flip the coin and leaders from a dysfunctional standpoint, I don't think they're trying to damage culture. I just think they're reproducing their own internal flaws in the workplace. And so we come back to the beginning here is that unknowingly, yes, that can happen unknowingly, but self-awareness matters in leadership. And who was the famous person said to know thyself, right? Um, that goes back to something I think is very important is that our focus on ourselves internally in our professional development so that your downstream strategy can be more effective.
Hmm. Hmm. Let's talk a little bit about lightning strike moments. We mentioned it, as we were doing our pre-research with you. What are those moments?
Sure. I define lightning strikes there. It's a topic I cover early in my book. And the lightning strikes are what I call moments that interrupt instantaneously whatever it is that you're doing in your life. There are some that you create, you're the author of, but also um, they can be events in life um, that come upon you. Maybe it's a death in the family, right? Where things interrupt where you were and who you were just a few seconds ago. From a business perspective, it usually interrupts whatever illusion you're living in. So there's moments in life in leadership where something hits you hard enough that your normal expectations stop working. So, a catastrophic failure, maybe it's a betrayal, a firing, a collapse.
Hmm.
We hear about this, the medical diagnosis that nobody wanted. Those are lightning strikes. We see in some organizations, professionals just unravel when the stress gets to them. And we may all be trying to hold it together, but when a lightning strike happens, what I talk about in the book is that it's sudden, it's instantaneous, and basically the person you were a millisecond ago, you can no longer go back to. And so that's what I describe as a lightning strike. And most people think these are painful events, and that's the whole story. And I really don't think it's the story. I just think the lightning strike is really the revealer, right? A lightning strike for me is not something that's there to hurt you, but it is there to expose you. It's there to stop you from taking certain things forward that you can't take with you anymore in this journey that you're on. And I think that's why those moments matter so much, because they're not just interruptions. I think they're invitations to things that can be fixed. And that's another chapter in the book where I talk about the gifts are in the pain. Pain's not the problem. The gifts are actually in the pain. I even have made this statement before that, and this is true for me, that success in my life has actually taught me nothing but failure. but literally every failure that I've ever had in my life has given me the gifts that I was looking for. So counterintuitive, but it's been true for me.
Right, right, right. Now, with that said, why don't people take advantage of those moments instead of,
Yeah, I'll speak to myself about that. And I think, I feel like most of us probably feel the same way, is because we want relief more than we want revelation. That would be the one liner.
Mm,
Relief is seeking comfort, right? Revelation means I may have to go back and relive the pain again. And some of the topics that I talk about, in my book, I go back and revisit extraordinary business failure that happened to me. And we'll get into that, right now, but extraordinary business failure where I was left with nothing. And going back and revisiting that is not looking for relief. I'm asking for the discomfort. I'm
mm,
asking those moments, of why did this happen, the self-reflection and analyzing that in great detail. So I think it's normal human instinct to escape, to run, to blame, or to outwork it. That's something we see all the time. I'm going to outwork it. I'm going to throw myself into work,
mhm.
but you can only outrun yourself for so long. You're going to get caught eventually. And this back to normal, that person's gone. So I just think that most people avoid those moments because they look for comfort versus revelation. And that can be in food, that can be in drink, that can be in travel, it can be in a lot of things. But I also believe this as well. People aren't dumb and they know what they're running from and they know what their challenges are. So why is avoidance so common? It's the easy way out, in my opinion. And it's not because people are weak. It's because the transformation, right, to trying to be who we're meant to be or who we want to be, that's the hard work.
Right. And you've been alluding around this piece, but I want to kind of just dove right a little bit more into it. When I'll say me or another leader, when we hit this moment, obviously you said it's second nature for us to be able to avoid it. But what should be top of our mind to keep us in the moment, to be able to really seize the moment when we have this lightning strike? What can we do
Yeah,
to, I call it, kind of
yeah.
program ourselves?
Well, this is not extraordinary advice. It's just something that I do for myself. Is one of the things in my latter years, last 10 years of my life, when I feel like something is chasing me, the very first thing I do is I stop trying to outrun it immediately. I mentally turn to whatever that issue is and address that issue. So I don't explain it. I don't rush away from it. I don't eat, immediately, medicate myself with being busy or going on a vacation or, drinking, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
But when as a leader, as a business leader, there's a lot of things coming at us, a lot of thoughts, a lot of whispers, a lot of noise in the office, a lot of noise out on the road. And my just as transparent advice, if I could give someone, sit with those things. It's okay to listen to the voice. Ask the question why. Because whatever it's trying to expose, if you can get to that, that might be the breakthrough that some people need to get to the place they're trying to go. Right. So it's not I'm not saying it's a pain to avoid. I think it's a pain to sit with and examine. And that would just be my advice. If you're in a leadership position, is if you've got that constant voice in your head over and over again, don't worry about being false. Don't worry about feeling inflated or being performative, but sit with it. Don't waste it. And it may be painful, but it might be one of the best gifts you give yourself to wrestle with that. Other people are counting on you, including yourself.
Right, right, right. So let's discuss, leading while being disconnected. What does that look like when a leader is successful but internally disconnected?
Well, there can be one of the symptoms that we would never know is that they can be impressive for a long time, but be absolutely, disconnected internally. I run into this all the time, especially with men, because we can sit down and have these discussions and about, how things are going. But if we start getting into deeper water instead of the shallow conversation that sails are up and this is going great and that's going great, we get into those deeper conversations. they'll start to talk a little bit about how they feel disconnected. Some people use the word, I don't feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I don't know where else I would be.
Right.
So you may be productive, you may be decisive, maybe driven. You may be espousing that outward control that men love to do. You're respected, right? Discipline. But many of the high producers that I talk to, again, the ones that are willing to talk about, and I've met them many times in my life, if they're willing to be vulnerable and share that that operating from performance all the time to drive the results leaves to some degree leaves them empty unless they have another place they can go get fulfilled. So that's where disconnection usually shows up. It's subtle at first, but it builds up over time and it doesn't go away. So you can look successful, um, but sustaining that for long periods of time is not alignment, right? But it does carry a cost long term.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, let's talk about the cost. What is the hidden cost of leading from a misalignment?
I think again another long laundry list of activities there. Lost productivity, challenges with your leadership with your employees or those you lead. May not have to be employees, could be coworkers. Challenges with the family. Just an unhealthy lifestyle. I think eventually teams begin over time to mirror, not exactly, mirror is a long word or the wrong word, but I think over time that it shows up in an organization or in a life. The performance that you bring begins to show up in others because your behavior becomes the accepted or approved um, style, and that's the culture that you develop. And I just think again, the higher up in leadership you are, the less you're aligned internally, then those failings will in some way make their way into an organization. And so I don't know how else to describe it other than dysfunction can hide for a long time, but it doesn't mean it's not happening, and it can definitely affect your family life. It shows up in fatigue, right?
Right.
Uh, you can be culturally fragile, but I think eventually the symptoms show up. I think burnout is one of those symptoms over time. I think people can become resentful, but I just believe strongly that those things, your internal alignment, is ultimately going to show up again, whether it's in your family or in your organization, especially if you're in a leadership position. That's how disconnection spreads.
Hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the principle of exchange. What does that mean for our listeners?
Yeah. It's funny when I originally thought about that, um, I called it the law of exchange, right? Then I had to go back and think about some science classes. It's not a law, it's a principle, right? And I really didn't come up with this until I was in my Ironman training. And it was just the idea that real transformation always requires that we let go of something else false in order to receive something to replace it that may be true. Okay. So in the principle of transformation, using my Ironman example, I had to exchange time in order to gain something that I wanted that was more true or more valuable to me, which is working out 6 days a week. Right. There were other things that I had to exchange. And if I didn't make that exchange, it was unachievable, right, to gain something that I wanted. And that's really the fundamental of the exchange is that I have to, in some cases, release what no longer belongs or I no longer can't carry that forward in order to achieve what it is I want to do.
Mm.
Right. And you can apply that to a lot of things, but to me, the deepest change, it doesn't come by adding. This is the interesting thing I've thought about the principle of exchange. It's not about adding, it's about subtraction. It's not about adding more, right? It's about what am I willing to let go of that can't be carried forward? What am I going to trade that for to move forward and gain something that I otherwise couldn't have? And I'm going to add one more piece to that. Coming up with this idea, this philosophical idea of the principle of exchange, using it as a teaching tool, it caused me to ask another question. And that question was to myself, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because if I could answer that question, I could draw a direct correlation to where I could go as long as I didn't break promises to myself, if that makes sense.
That does. Hmm. So let's talk a little about, the belief of success. Do most people have to, oh, okay, let me rethink this. You know, what belief about success do most people have to completely wrong? They thought they had it designed the right way, but they're completely wrong about what success is.
Hmm. I'm going to speak for myself. I felt like for a long time in my life that success was proof that I was becoming who I was meant to be. And some of who I thought I was meant to be, believe it or not, was I wanted other people to believe in me and see me as being that.
Mm,
Okay. I had to go through my own valleys to figure out the hard way, the very hard way, that the reason I felt that way was because I wasn't enough for me. So when I wasn't enough for myself,
mm,
then I had to go out and do, follow that belief that other people do that I think is completely wrong is that I needed another car, I needed the landscaping, I needed the bedroom furniture, I needed the house, there was a place I had to be, a thing I had to do, a person I had to know, a drink I had to make. There was just some additive thing that I needed, and that success that would be the reflection, right? It would all of those things would reflect back on me, and that would bring about alignment, and that would bring about who I am and who I'm supposed to be. And I'm just gonna, I hope the listeners hear this. That is the emptiest, darkest place you can go, because when you get there, you don't want any of that stuff because you're just empty. Can't take any of that with you. So when you ask the question, what do most people, I think, get wrong? I think it's the same thing I got wrong, is that I needed other people, things, places to affirm me. And until I learned that I needed none of that, that I'm enough for myself, no matter what, I don't care if I'm digging ditches, I'm enough for me,
right.
right? And if you can get to a place where you're enough for yourself, man, your whole world's going to change. And the way you approach systems and processes and business and leadership and service, and you're going to approach everything differently. The whole filter changes when you don't have to be served. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I say in my book. It's either to serve or be served. Can't be both.
Mm, mm. So on a closing reflection, you brought up something earlier. If someone's listening feels something is off in their life or in their leadership style, what should they do first?
I did say it earlier, and I would say my first recommendation is stop dismissing it, right? If you have a quiet sense that something is off in your life, then one of the most honest signals or it may be one of the most honest signals you're trying to sell yourself. So don't rush past it. It's not okay to be numb.
Hmm.
You're not going to solve or quiet the science by busyness. Busyness is like turning up radio static, right? You're not going to get there through productivity or noise. There's not going to be a strategy. So I would encourage you that if you feel like something is off, listen to it, sit down, write about it, get still, learn to ask yourself better questions. Don't be looking at everybody else. Don't be asking people, how do I fix this? Um, ask yourself, what is this trying to show me? What is out of alignment? Right? Those are the things I think I would encourage them to wrestle with. And I know there's a lot of places in our mind we don't want to go because it still hurts. It's okay. That's okay. And if it does hurt, a little bit of proof there that that's something that you might want to reconcile.
Right, right, right. So Scott, where can people find, more about your work or connect with you? And I'll put the
I
links
really
down below in the description.
thank you. I appreciate that. The easiest way right now is my website, which is my name, Scott Lackey, Lackey.com. My book launches on May the 14th, coming up very quickly, and excited about that. couple of national endorsements, and soon to be on the speaking tour. And but most importantly, it's at scottlackey.com. I hope, honestly, they'll dig through the 24 chapters of the book, because I dig into some of these topics in great detail, and I tell some of these stories that had me answer all of these questions. And so, if that helps the listeners, nothing would make me happier. Is that it helps someone learn the things that I struggled with and was challenged with. You gave me the opportunity to share on this platform, which again, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to do this. So, thank you.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. You're welcome. So, Scott, we end every podcast, with a question. So, what do you want people to walk away, question about themselves, after this episode?
Yeah, it's always a good question, right? I think the question I would leave the audience with today, since we've been all over this topic, is, ask yourself the question: is the life that you're building, is it actually connected with who you really are, who you really want to be, who you really think you are? And running a parallel course to who you want to be and who you think you are is not being on the same course. Two different tracks have two different destinations. So I just challenge you to ask that self. And if it's not, and again, there's a lot of forward-looking activities that you can do, but the first activity is asking yourself that hard question, and then sitting with that and asking yourself, what is going to be my first step, and come back into alignment. And I'll promise you this: if you do work on yourself and you do invest in yourself, you're the first one that gets the benefit from it. But everybody else that gets the benefit are going to be immediately in your surrounding, your family, your kids, your wife, grandparents, parents, neighbors, friends, and certainly your colleagues at work.
Mhm.
That's why I would challenge you to do that.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Scott, thank you so much. We appreciate your insight, your wisdom, and looking forward to releasing your book in May.
Thank you very much again, and I hope our paths cross again when the book publishes.
Absolutely. Well, good luck, my friend. Look forward to talking to you in the future.
All right, all the best.